Welcome back to WagerTalk.com. It's Preakness. It's our best bets. Let's see if we can deliver the winner for the Preakness this year. And Matt, before we get your best bet, one thing I'm going to point out with the Preakness, for years, Pimlico had been termed as a inside biased racetrack. Now that has actually changed. They changed some things starting back in 1987. They changed the surface a little bit because they wanted to get away from that bias. And since 1987, there has only been 2 horses out of post position 1 or post position 2 that have won the Preakness. So they totally flipped that around, but it's one of those, it was an urban myth for so long that everybody still thinks the bias is the inside. So the one place you don't want to be is down at the rail, and that's one of the horses, Multiplier, that a lot of people think do have a license to improve. He raced well in the Illinois Derby. Do you think this is a horse that can jump up?
Well, one of the things I thought that you talked about in the Kentucky Derby that I really agree with was the idea of a horse bouncing. And we used Hence as the perfect example as a horse that had run like a career best 86, had run a lot in the 80s, suddenly ran 1:04 in like the Sun Derby, and then suddenly everyone was all over him, and that horse really had potential to bounce. I think what you have to like with Multiplier is a horse that we've seen progressively get better, which is what you want to see from young horses, running a 78 buyer, 86 buyer, 93 buyer, and then that huge 104 buyer in the Illinois Derby. So if nothing else, the horse seems to be progressing and growing as you would expect a young horse to do, and he's certainly capable of a big effort, and I'll definitely be using him in my exotics.
The horse that obviously we talked about, Always Dreaming, absolutely perfect trip. Will he get the perfect trip here? I think he's going to have to battle one of the horses early, whether it is Classic Empire or whether it's Conquest Mo Money, which with Conquest Mo Money drawing the outside, he's only got one way to go. And the one thing about this horse, he passed the Kentucky Derby. And as I said in the other video, horses that don't race in the Kentucky Derby don't do well as far as the win goes in the Preakness. And that's mainly because, well, if you weren't in the Derby, you weren't a good enough horse. But that wasn't the case with this one. He had enough points to race in the Derby. They made a decision not to race in the Derby. One of it was partly due to money, is they didn't nominate him to the Kentucky Derby. I don't know how you don't nominate a horse to the Kentucky Derby. If, the early payments are so small, you do that. But this was an instance where he wasn't eligible. They would have had to supplement him. It would have been a $200,000 supplemental fee. And to go into a 20-horse field, put up $200,000 to get into the race, maybe that had part to do it, plus the fact he didn't race as a 2-year-old. So he had another thing to battle with history in the Derby, because nobody since Apollo in 1882 didn't race as a 2-year-old win the Derby. So they pointed to this one. So he's a better horse coming into this one than most horses that skip the Derby. But drawing the outside post, he's got to go to the front end or he's going to be left out. In his style, he needs to be close to the pace, and that might get us the fractions to set up some of the closers.
And if he doesn't go, and we've seen this before, unfortunately, we've seen a lot of pace lately in a lot of these races. We're not seeing a lot of pace here. You look at all these horses, they all want to run the same style. It's either a stalker or a deep closer here. He's the one guy that can go to the front, and I think he is the one horse who's actually going to determine how this race is run. If he goes early and really goes for it and Always Dreaming goes with him, then all of a sudden it sets up really well for Classic Empire, Multiplier, Gunnevera, maybe even looking at Lee coming back. But if he gets out there and Always Dreaming just kind of lets him sit out there by himself and they run moderate fractions, it's going to be hard for those deep closers. The one horse that's going to have the biggest impact on who wins this race, to me, is Conquest Mo Money.
Absolutely. And let's get to Classic Empire, because I have an idea that might be where you're going.
I think at the price, there's no other play in this race besides Classic Empire. He couldn't have had a more troubled trip in the Derby, and yet to still deal with all that trouble, like you said, show that professionalism and still rally to get fourth. I thought he actually ran the most impressive race. And when we look at his back history, that I think we both agreed prior to the Derby, this is the horse that probably should be the favorite in the Kentucky Derby. He didn't go off the favorite in the Derby. There was a huge inside bias that day. Of course, he was post 14 in the Derby, way outside, had all kinds of issues. I think, look here, starting from the 5 post, he shouldn't have any of those issues. He's shown the ability to beat any horse in this race before, and most of them he has beat. And when he's running his best, to me, he's the best horse in this race.
And the other thing that I'll point out, one of the reasons that I didn't like him in the Derby, I said you had to use him, but I didn't like him to win, is we were concerned, did he have enough of a foundation to win the Derby? Because all of the problems and setbacks he had leading up to the Derby, they had to kind of rush him to the Arkansas Derby just to get him into the Kentucky Derby to have him semi-tight. Well, he showed that he was tight enough to finish fourth given all of the problems. So now he should be even tighter for this race. I like Classic Empire. I think this is his race to win, and I think this will have a big determination on that yes and no bet, because I think this is the best shot for Always Dreaming to get beat, because the Stone Cold Closers didn't, as you said, didn't skip the race that they should have skipped, in my opinion.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense to me that looking at Lee and Gunnevera skip this race. I could see if you had a couple more pace horses up front entering this race and you thought, oh, wow, there's going to be a big speed duel and we're going to have a real shot to win a big payday here coming from the clouds, but they don't here. I mean, Conquest Mo Money is your only true pace horse here, with Always Dreaming being a stalker, and in reality, Classic Empire is even more of a closer than a stalker. We're just assuming he's going to be a stalker here. When you go back and watch the Arkansas Derby, he was at the back of that cloud of horses and had to rally behind him, and that's kind of been his history. He's never really gotten out early. So, look, we're assuming here that he's going to be a stalker in this race, but he could also be a little bit back.
Yeah. His early races at 2, he was more up front.
Yeah.
And then because of some of the problems and stuff, I think they raced him a little bit differently. But I will be shocked if he is not sitting third, fourth at worst in this race after they get settled heading into that first turn. I would be absolutely shocked. We agree with the winner. Any other horse you want to mention? Who is your second? Who would you put second in this one?
I'm actually going to use, I'm going to play a try box and some exacta boxes. I'm going to use Multiplier and Gunnevera. I still like Gunnevera. That was my big horse coming into the Derby. I'm not going to get off him here. I think he has a much better chance of running that big race. But I actually like Multiplier. I like the way that he's naturally progressed through his career and grown. Yes, this is a huge step up in class from the Illinois Derby. But his numbers say that he's fast enough to run with these horses, and if if that pace sets up for him, I felt like when I looked at the race, okay, Gunnevera looking at Lee Hentz, we know where they're going to be. They're going to be at the starting gate when everyone else hits the first turn, but they're going to be flying late. But this was another horse I thought could be sitting in that same place where you expect Classic Empire to be, in that stalking position behind Always Dreaming and behind Conquest Mo Money. Does he have the run to make it? We forget this is the shortest of the Triple Crown races, so maybe the distance issues with Multiplier aren't such big issues in this race. I wouldn't be surprised if he hits the board.
All right, well, I'm going to go Classic Empire on top. I still have Always Dreaming finishing second. I have Gunnevera as my third choice. And then after that, I'm going to go, a little bit deeper in the third spot. I think that really there's a lot of horses that can run third in this one. And, don't be afraid to put some extra horses on that bottom line. It sure worked for me in the Kentucky Derby. Will we have a payout like we had in the Kentucky Derby? No, because A, we only have 10 horses as compared to 20. And even though this is a Triple Crown race, you know yourself, the Preakness doesn't get the same amount of, money into the pool that you see in the Kentucky Derby. And that's why we, hammered home. That's the race you want to bet a lot of money in, the Derby, because there's so much dead money in that pool when you get inflated. I'll be honest, when we were sitting there waiting, that's the best feeling in the world, when you're sitting with a winning ticket in your hand and you're waiting to see the payouts. They asked me, what do you think? I said, probably 3,000. I didn't expect it to be 8.
Yeah.
And that was like, well, well done. I made one mistake that day, learned a lesson. And guy called me out on Twitter for it, and he says, because I had the dollar try, I should have played 2 50-cent tries. And I would have avoided giving Uncle Sam $2,000.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
So, lesson learned. But you don't expect to have a trifecta pay over $5,000 on a dollar ticket.
That's with the favorite winning.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Go figure. So
the one thing I would say about this race to people, and to put this race in while we both like the same horse up top into perspective, I think Classic Empire and Always Dreaming, look at their Derby odds, you look at the two horses' careers comparable. These are two dead even horses. And if you took two dead even teams, the Red Sox and the Yankees playing today, game is a pick 'em, but they gave you 4-1 on one team and -120 on the other. You take 4-1 or even 3-1. Let's say the morning line's 3. You take it every single time because that's where the value is. I think that's what we need to push to people here is you're getting 3-1 on a horse that's dead even probably with the favorite. That seems like a really good value.
3-1 is where I'm going to be ecstatic if we get 3-1. I think there's going to be some more sharp guys like you and me that are going to come in and just want to bet against the chalk, and maybe Always Dreaming floats up to 6-5, and if he floats up to 6-5,
we're coming down to 2-1.
We're coming down. You know, maybe maybe we'll get 9-5, 2-1, but even 5-2, I'd be ecstatic to get $7 on this horse, and that might be where my money is bet the most, is on the win bet, because I think there is tremendous value. Hey guys, if you want to jump on board at WagerTalk this week, you can pick up a 3-day all-access package. Pick your 3 days. Start on Friday, cover the whole weekend. And of course, if you take your favorite capper, you'll get his baseball, his basketball, and if you're looking at somebody like myself, I'll be including my horse racing selections in there. Paid out very well in the Kentucky Derby. We invested $390 in the Derby. We brought back over $9,000. I can't promise that in this one. We're not going to have that kind of payoffs, but I'm still looking for a nice profit on Saturday. Check it out at WagerTalk.com. I want to thank Matt for coming in, my horse buddy. You're a master of everything. UFC, football, basketball, baseball, and when we need somebody for horses,
well, the guys in New York don't think I'm a master of anything lately, the way these NBA favorites and overs keep hitting. So,
have you ever, I mean, we're going to talk about it with the guys in the other video. Have you ever seen anything like this for a period of, this is the playoffs, and we're in the conference finals?
It's supposed to be the best teams versus the best teams, and it's just automatic. The favorite and over parlay is cashing every night. 2 straight nights, we've lost over minus 100% in parlay handle for the night.
Wow.
Just unbelievable.
And that just kills you because, it's not only those big guys hitting you, but when you've got all the little guys that are doing their 3, 4, 5 teamers and are throwing in a couple big baseball favorites, and then they do the, you know what happens when you start multiplying by 5 on the parlays. I feel bad, sir. I feel for you. All right, guys, check it out. We'll have more videos here at WagerTalk.com.